Hey everybody, it's Peter, and this is going to be a good video. This has been one that I've been wanting to do for a while. So in this video, we're going to compare the Can-Am Ryker. This is the base model with the 900cc engine, 3-cylinder engine, and we're going to compare that to the Spyder F3. Now, of course, the F3 is a step up from the Ryker. The Spyder is a step up from the Ryker, but there's a lot of misconceptions that I've seen along the way, and I'm going to give my opinion on which one is right for who. And spoiler alert, it's not like if you can afford that one, you have to move up from this one. There are things that this one does better for some people, and of course, let's be honest, it is less expensive. So in this video, we're going to compare some key differences, but we're also specifically going to talk about some things that I've noticed that I think might take the stress out of finding one that works better for you than the other. So let's get going with this review. So one of the key differences between these two is obviously the engine. Now this one does make less power, and again, this is the 900cc, so this makes less power than this, but this one is also lighter than that. Now that being said, this one is not faster than the F3. The F3 is the fastest Spyder available, mostly because of its weight, but there is some sort of gearing that I understand that is just slightly going to get this one off the line a little quicker. So we'll talk about that in a second, but from a driving experience, the Spyder has a transmission where your thumb shifts up and your trigger shifts down. The key being you don't have to downshift. So if you come to a stop sign, stoplight, that kind of thing, the Spyder will automatically shift down for you, find the right gear, rev match on the way down, and it makes it very, very easy to drive, but you still have that connection with upshifting and the connection with downshifting. Now, the one thing that I would love to see is a fully automatic transmission. I know I'm the kind of person who, I'm not one for automatic transmissions, but because this automatically does the downshifts, it would be nice if it could automatically do the upshifts. It doesn't, and I'm okay with that because again, it keeps that connection, but it's an interesting way to do things. On the Ryker, I actually found the Ryker to be slightly more enjoyable to drive casually in this sense, at least in the sense of the transmission. And normally I don't like CVT transmissions. That's what this has. CVT transmissions in cars, they're usually not great and certainly not fun. But Can-Am has a history of making CVTs fun in snowmobiles, and that's what you've got here, is something that allows you to enjoy the scenery and have some fun seeing what's going on without having to worry about being in the perfect gear, being in the right revs, or even just being in the best rev range for fuel efficiency, where this thing's just gonna take care of that for you. So it does that, and I kind of like that in this driving experience. So while the transmission shifting experience does give you some more sporty feel, this one still has some magic in the sportiness to it, despite the fact that it has a CVT. Let's talk about a couple other little things that you should consider if you're looking at these units, and let's start here with the Spyder. So starting with the Spyder, anytime I see a three-wheel vehicle from Can-Am, even though it might be aimed more at the sporty environment, and certainly this F3 is aimed as a sportier ride, I still see the opportunity for touring, and that's where the Spyder has some advantages, but not as many as you think. So first of all, this one here is a single seat model, and so is the Ryker that I grabbed today. However, both of them can have that second seat here. On this seat here, the second passenger seat, it's just, there's no way around it. It's going to be more comfortable than on the Ryker. Now, I will clarify the Ryker has some nice bits too, so we'll talk about that when we get there, but you're gonna have a wider seat. And when I sit across this, you can see a nice comfortable touring position. You can set your pegs to different areas depending on how you want it. This works pretty well for me. Of course, the rear seat is gonna be standard there as well, but again, a wide seat. Now, one of the things you're gonna remember is you can add bags to both sides of this, even if it's just the F3 model like we're looking at today. You don't have to go to the touring models to have those permanent bags. You could still add bags, and you can add them on both sides. The Ryker, you can only add a factory bag on one side. There's aftermarket options, but again, you're dealing with aftermarket. One of the things I like back here is if you didn't add anything to this, you just had the rear passenger seat, a good dry bag is gonna give you a bunch of storage, and this has storage out front. So let's take a quick look at that right now. So I'm filming in the rain here. We got to get this done. It is November 1st, and I don't know how much more nice days we're going to have out here in Canadian November. So I'm going to pop open the front here, and you're going to see the way you do that is you turn the key. If I can do that the right way, I'm trying to film as well as do it. Open it up like that, and you've got a good amount of storage in here. Now, probably a full-face helmet would fit in here. You do have a connector there for a USB for a phone. That can link to the dash. That's a really nice feature to have. We're gonna show the dash differences in a second here as well. The F3 has the Spyder F3 has a smaller front trunk than the Limited, but I believe the new Canyon coming out in 2025, which I'll be reviewing on this channel if you want to see it, I believe due to the sort of blunt nose of that, it doesn't have any front storage on that. So you have lockable storage even on this sporty model designed for sport. You've got some storage here. That's a big advantage over something like the Ryker. So looking at the Spyder here as a touring capable rig, you'll also notice a good sized windshield on here. The bigger difference is the width of the windshield here. The general width of the bodywork is going to do more to keep some of that wind blast off you, but of course you can have different style and different size windshields on here. On the Ryker, no windshield. You do have some storage, I'll show it to you in a second, but it's just basically like a glove compartment in here. It's not a lot of storage, and it doesn't come from the factory with anything lockable. Now that's important to remember too, because if you're looking for lockable storage, this one is already standard no matter what. With no options on it, you've got standard lockable storage. You'd have to add accessories to add lockable storage to the rest of these. Now, seating position here is definitely lower. Oh, I get to have my wet butt on camera. We're gonna do that for you guys. All right, sitting position, you do sit lower, and you definitely have a more open feel. There is a much more compact feel to the overall spot here, but there are some interesting things going on. So let's bring you in closer and show you a couple things here that the Spyder doesn't have that may make the Ryker a better fit for you. So taking a bit of a look from the side here, you can kind of see some of my riding position here. So you have your small gauge cluster here and a very open feel. Now, one thing that's kind of cool is you can move this handlebar forward or back, and you can do that at any time. You don't have to choose where you want it. So you might want to have a backrest accessory and have it leaned back. You may want to drive a little bit more sporty, and you can lift this up, pull it in, and you can lean more an aggressive thing. Now, if you're going around corners, sometimes that lean forward, aggressive kind of feel is more fun. To me, there appears to be a little bit more body involvement in driving something like the Ryker. But another advantage that you have here is this whole steering area is very close to me. It's not set out like it is on the Spyder. So if you do put a windshield on here, even if it has a little bit less width than the Spyder, because it's so close to you, it actually has a pretty good effect to help you with touring as well. There's one other piece that's really good for touring on this model here, on any version of the Ryker, that the Spyder F3 doesn't have, so let's show you that as well. So we're over here on the left side of the Spyder. Now remember, the Spyder, although it has gears, does not have a gear lever. You do everything from your fingers and your thumbs, which means that this could be adjusted anywhere you want. But this is the left side of the Spyder. Let's look at the right side of the Spyder for a second. The right side of the Spyder has that brake pedal there. So this is something that is connected to this black bar here, and you have to decide when you buy this bike how long of a brake lever here, or how long of this rod you want, depending on where you're gonna put your feet. What that means is on a tour on the Spyder F3, where you choose to get this from the showroom is where it's going to be. The Ryker actually gives you more options. Let's show you the brake side of the Ryker. So taking a look at this entry-level Ryker model, you see that you have the smallest version of pegs. Now they're still much bigger than a typical motorcycle peg, but they are much smaller than you have on the Ryker. Now you can get the rally style pegs, which are much larger. You can also have various foot peg style or foot board style things on here or on the Ryker. But here's the difference. You've got your brake pedal here. If I lift this up like this, I can slide this all the way back here, and I can slide it all the way forward there, wherever I want it, and all I have to do is press this down, and you can lock it in place. And what that means is if you're touring on this, you can change it to a more sporty position. So if you think about a sport bike rider, your legs are more square, or a more cruising position where it sits way out front there. There's quite a bit of adjustment there that really does give you a different seating position, and you can change it on the fly, which means that if you want to go sport riding, you want to have your feet over here, you can do that. If you want to go like a cruiser over there, and if you want to switch it up in a ride, you literally just pull over for 2 seconds, you lift this side, put it where you want, you lift the other side, put it where you want, it locks in place, and that is a really nice feature here on the Ryker that you don't get on the Spyder. There's one other feature you can have here on a Ryker that you can't get on the Spyder F3, and it's worth noting. So the Ryker that we're looking at today, again, that base model, has the standard suspension, and the standard suspension has no real adjustments. But if you step up to the sport model or the rally model, which is one trim above this, you actually have 3-position adjustments that you can, or actually 4-position adjustments that you can set right up top, right where I'm pointing with my finger at the top of the shock. And that allows you to sort of soften out the ride or firm it up. And it really does make a difference. And it's the right number of adjustments. There's a lot of things where you can adjust things, 20, 30 different clicks. It's just, well labeled, and it's front and rear suspension that can be adjustable on the Ryker. So again, the Rally has a standard, the Sport has that standard, and it does change the little bit of the character of how these things happen. If we take a look here on the Spyder, it does not have that on the F3, and that, to me, is a slight advantage for the Ryker for flexibility. But of course, you have to step up the models, and if we talk about stepping up models, we have to go all the way with that. So let's talk about a few features that you may want to get on the Ryker that might be putting you in Spyder territory. So approaching the Ryker from behind here, you can see it's very easy to sort of walk over the back and sit on here. It's a very small unit, so you would think if I added an accessory to have a passenger that it actually wouldn't be a lot of room. It's actually pretty good. Now, if you had a very, very, very large passenger, then you're gonna probably want a Spyder anyways. But an average size passenger, actually with the accessory that plugs in the back here, it comes out here, it has a fold down backrest, and with the backrest, you actually don't feel that passenger on your back like you would on many motorcycles. So you have a lot of space. So if you're buying this 3-wheel thing with all of the stability, one of the advantages is it doesn't become so unstable around town like a motorcycle can with a passenger. It's much easier to take a passenger. So when you start adding things like maybe adding a passenger on, that becomes something that, again, raises the price, but it still keeps you in the loop. Now, this particular model doesn't come with cruise control. As you move up, you can either add a cruise control as an accessory, or if you move to something like the Rally model, it's gonna have that standard. I think cruise control is worthwhile having on these bikes, and again, that just creeps the price up a little bit further. Cruise control is an option on the lower level trims here. It's standard on the Ryker. I believe it's still an option on the Sport. It's standard on all of the Spyders. So here's the riding position. It's worth showing you here. A little bit more compact, definitely narrower in the legs. And again, I can move my legs anywhere I want, but that's the riding position here. Let's just show you the riding position over here, because it's some of the same stuff with the Spyder here. So jumping on the Spyder here, sitting across, definitely a cushier seat. Now remember, the Ryker has accessories as well. If you get the Rally model, it's gonna have a cushier seat. You can get a cushier seat along the way as well, but that creeps the price up closer to this, and this is still a better seat. Passenger here, if you had a larger passenger than you're gonna take on the Ryker, this back seat is more space, but again, you could put a backrest on, various style backrest. So right away, you can get the Ryker to a point where you're not as far away from the Spyder, and maybe it makes more sense to go with the Spyder. One thing I will say, if you're a very large person and you have a fairly large passenger as well, you're probably gonna just appreciate the extra space of a Spyder. If you're an average sized person like myself and you're carrying average to smaller passengers, the Ryker's gonna be totally fine for you, even in the power department. All right, let's talk about the dash now as well, because you may be someone who wants some of the dash features here. People have been calling for some of those features in the Ryker and they're just not there. So let's show you the dash quickly on both, and we'll talk about that. So the dash here on the Ryker is pretty simple stuff. You're ending up with a very basic display. It tells you the type of key that's in there. It tells you the overall gear that you're in, temperature display, fuel display. It tells you to read the safety card before you start. You got some A/B stuff. There's no way to put navigation on that dash, and it kind of is what it is. It's a very basic dash. So the thing I don't like is if you have a 3-wheel thing, you're thinking about touring, and you want to put navigation on here, you're clipping something onto your handlebar, and it's going to be off-centered. It's not my favorite way of mounting nav. Now you can mount a tank bag down here, or a special kind of bag that will mount down here from Can-Am that has a clear see-through thing that you can connect your phone to and that kind of thing. So there are options to put navigation sort of out of the way in front of you, but if you wanted to put up on your handlebars or something like that, you can put your phone there, you can put your GPS there, but they're going to be off-centered on that handlebar. And depending on the handlebar, sometimes there's a little bit less room and more room because, again, the handlebars are slightly different in the Rally and the Sport and other things as well. So that's a basic dash. You really step up in the Spyder. Let me show you that. Taking a look at the Spyder here, a 10.25-inch display, may be nicer than your car. Let's turn that right to the on position. Sorry, I had it too far off there. And you can see it sort of come to life here. Now, there's a lot of glare in there. Your camera always shows more glare than it does in person. But what you're seeing here is, tells you to go past the safety card. You have a really clear display. It can be set in dark mode, light mode, but you can see this entire side over here has a whole bunch of information. You can connect your media, you can change extra gauges and graphs and stuff there, but one of the things you can do is make your Apple CarPlay work. So if you have an Apple device, Apple CarPlay can connect in there, and then you have things like navigation through your cell phone right on the dash. To me, if you're gonna be doing some touring, you're gonna want a map there at some point, and this does offer you that function, as well as a little bit more, you know, controls and a little more things. Now, with that advanced controls comes more advanced handlebar controls. You can see here on the Spyder you have, or on the Ryker, you have your horn, your signal, and that's basically it. Here you've got all kinds of menu controls. Now these menu controls can be a little bit confusing when you're just driving down the road. So there is a slight learning curve to work on here, but the other thing that's nice is that is a touch screen. You can touch things, so just get the gloves that you can touch the touch screen with, and you do have some option to just quickly cycle through things there as well. So before we wrap up, let's talk about two other differences that are worth noting. The Spyder has electric power steering, which can lighten the steering in the long sweepers or lighten the steering in any kind of turning environment, whereas this one does not have the power steering, which gives you the benefit of having that really direct, confident, exact feeling of the road. You know exactly what your front tires are doing. It's the same on both, but there's definitely something unique about driving any vehicle without power steering. It really gives you that direct connection. So there is that. The other thing worth noting is this is belt drive. This one is shaft drive. Now you might think it would be the other way around, but belt drive there, shaft drive here, which both are very low maintenance, but certain people have preferences to either one, and that's great. So one of the things I've always considered is I've always thought you want to go with the cheaper one until you can afford the better one. And what I've realized is that's not always the case. It's the same thing with sports cars. You can get to sports cars and exotic cars where they're just not better than less expensive models, and that's kind of what it comes down to with these two. So if you had to decide between one of these and money was no option, let's assume you had all the money in the world and you could afford either one, which one would you choose, or which one should you choose? Well, let's start with this. If you're someone who wants extra technology in the dash, your Spyder's the only option. If you're a larger person, larger than me or much larger than me, the Spyder's just gonna give you more comfort. It's got that little bit bigger seat, a little bit more room, and especially if you're taking a passenger, you've got more room for your passenger as well. Now, if you're my size, again, about 6 feet tall, proportional person, you can still be bigger than me and ride the Spyder comfortably, but if you're my size and a passenger, that kind of thing, you're gonna wanna be a little bit my size-ish to have that second person on there, because as you get too much weight on this one, it just kind of loses some playful character, and the seats are a little bit smaller, but surprisingly still fairly comfortable for what they are. So that's a couple key things. What surprised me is when I drive my 900cc motorcycle, I'm always looking to pass. I'm always trying to be aggressive, whereas this one is sporty in the, you know, in the speed limit type areas. It has certainly a sporty feel, but I find that I just enjoy riding it at any speed. And the sign of a really good vehicle is something that you can enjoy at any speed. And to be honest, the Ryker is a little bit more enjoyable through town, through just normal stuff. This one, like a lot of sports cars, like a lot of sports motorcycles, comes to life as you accelerate. It comes to life as you're up to speed. So not that this one's bad in town, it's certainly very capable in town, but I was surprised at how good the Ryker is at any speed. The Ryker will tail off in its enjoyment factor, or there's a crossover in its enjoyment factor at highway speeds, simply because it is a smaller unit that is lighter weight. This one has a little more presence on the highway. I would drive either one of these hundreds and hundreds of kilometers, hundreds and hundreds of miles in a day without any issues at all. But the Spyder is gonna do that better. So if most of your riding is country roads, just looking for fun, I think the Ryker's gonna do you well. I like the flexible seating style of the pegs. I would put on this one the comfort seat. I think it's worth doing for someone like me. I like the back rest, or the rear seat that has that foldable backrest. It allows you to take a passenger without having the impact on your body. And I would probably put a windshield on this just to give me a little bit extra wind protection. And one of the reasons I would do that is because three-wheeled vehicles, especially here in Canada, really extend the riding season compared to something like a motorcycle, where you can't go out in certain rainy situations because it's just not fun. You can't go out in certainly cold situations because you just have less traction on the road. These ones with such big contact patches, they really extend the riding season, but having a little extra wind protection is going to help. Heated grips would be an option. I would definitely put cruise control on this as well, because again, they are good for touring. But once you start adding options to that, you get really close to this. If you're doing more of the higher speed, faster country roads, you want to do a lot more highways and touring, or you need some space for maybe camping vacations, this one's going to have more, and you can add bags on the side easier. This one only has the option to add a bag on the side you're looking at, because the other side is that shaft drive and it takes up space. Now there are aftermarket solutions to do that, but again, you start spending more and more money, you're gaining, really you have the same storage here anyways, and you have a few extra things. Fuel mileage wise, this one gets me a little bit better mileage than that one. Doesn't really bother me. They're not as good as motorcycles. They're better than economy cars, certainly if you drive them that way. So those are options as well. Which one's best for you? Well, one of the things we're going to do is next season, I will be driving versions of these all summer long, and the Canyon, and I'm going to try to get into the electric motorcycles from Can-Am. We're going to try to be in something non-stop so that you guys get your answers. If you made it this far in the video, you gotta hit the subscribe button. There's so much more coming. Thanks everybody for watching. And again, if you have questions, let me know. I'll come back to you with these vehicles and any other version, anything that Can-Am has to offer. We'll try to answer your questions. Thanks everybody for watching. Do me a favor, leave a comment, leave a like. We'll talk to you in the next one.